feed through Facebook, just to let you guys know. We have, we're starting, we're ready to go. Jennifer, we're live feed? Okay. So we also have Michael from 20 Valley Media, which is going to do some videos for us as well. Feel free anytime, guys, you want to, ask us questions, go grab some food, go to the bathroom, either way. Works for us. Okay, so thanks again. Like with the weather, I just had a lot of people cancel on me last minute. I'm happy that you guys came out. The reason why that we are having this event, and I love that you guys are all here, Michael approached me, was it a few months back, we talked about this, thought that I'd be a prime candidate for this because I've been doing this, it's something with the wealth that we've helped build with our family. Some of you guys know all the wealth that we've built, and knowing that the education I brought to other people how to do this kind of stuff, we came a long way. And we're realizing a lot of people aren't really sure how this actually came about, or how to get ahead without having to use your hands. So, instead of just working a 9 to 5 all the time, there's only so much you can possibly do. So I thought Michael was great. He came in, he had a nice presentation. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. So I don't want to give away too much of his thunder. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to Michael Boccia, my good friend.
Hey, thanks. Hi guys and girls, thanks for coming today. Like Dave said, the weather was supposed to not be so good, so it's great that you guys come out. But also, I think it's really great that you came out because a lot of people talk about wanting to do better, wanting to learn how to get ahead, earn some additional money, grow their wealth, but they're not willing to take the steps to do that. And by you coming today, you're taking the first step in learning some ways and some ideas on how to do that, okay? So great on you for coming. So this presentation is called The Path to the Good Life. So before we get into it, I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself. And my name is Michael Boccia. I'm a mortgage agent with the Mortgage Train. We're affiliated with Mortgage Center Canada, which is a part of the Dominion Lending family. So some of you may have heard of Dominion Lending. We're the largest broker network in all of Canada. And our particular firm, which is a small firm, it's only 13 agents, are number 15 in all of Canada with Mortgage Center Canada in terms of volume. So this year we'll fund about $140 million in mortgages. And that's I share that because we're so small, but we produce very well. And I think it can be attributed to a few things. But I think primarily it's because we're very client focused. And not just, everyone says they're client focused, but when I say client focused, I really mean that we don't think about the transaction right in front of us today. We're thinking ahead. We're talking to our clients. We're finding out their goals, what they'd like to accomplish, and we're getting them on that path right from the beginning. Even if it's not possible right now, we're setting them up and telling them what they need to do to get there, okay? So that's what this presentation is about, how we can put you guys on a path to the good life is what we call it, okay? So again, a little introduction to why I believe in real estate as an investment. So my first experience with it was in 1996. I was young. I was 16 years old. My parents decided to sell our house. So we bought a new house. The thing was that the new house was $25,000 more expensive than the one we were selling. So my parents had two options. One was to take out a small mortgage with about $25,000, or the second was to sell the rental property that we had. It was my grandparents' house. When they passed away, my parents purchased it, and it was great. We had a great renter. We had a cash flow positive, so we had a monthly income coming in, and we had no issues with that property. But my parents, who were immigrants, they came from Italy in the 50s, they were of the mindset that at an older age, it was not something that they wanted to do and take out a mortgage, right? Now, a lot of people of that age thought like that because they came here with nothing, and it was just their idea was to pay off their mortgage as fast as possible and not worry about that anymore. So they were happy with their decision, so they sold 2 properties and bought 1. And they had a little bit of money left over, and they put that in the bank in investments. So as I got older and I started thinking about real estate and purchasing a property and how I was going to do that, I thought about that house because it was my favorite house. If we had it today, I would probably be living in it. And I looked it up and I said, I want to see how much it's worth. So I looked it up probably about 10 years later, and it was at least 3 times the price of when they sold it. Okay, so that was my first experience. I'm like, wow, what if they had kept this property? Actually, today, I wasn't able to put it into the slide, but I did look today what the value of that property is. And today that property is worth $1.4 million. In 1996, they sold it for $280,000. So that's an increase of 5 times the amount in a 23-year period. So again, my parents were happy with the decision, but what would life be like or any different? Would my mother make different decisions today if she had that asset, if she had that wealth built up in that? Because I can assure you, I help her with her finances, and the money that they invested did not grow at the same level. Now, she's okay. She's not, she's not financially not well, but she would be that much better off, okay? So that was my first experience. So when I had an opportunity, my first opportunity with my wife, we decided we were gonna buy a rental property. So 3 years ago, we got a townhouse near my house, and we got a renter from the first month. We cash flow positive, which is great. The renters are fantastic, they're responsible, and they're respectful. And the best part is, in the 3 years that we've held this property, it's increased by 50%, okay? So all of my wealth today has been accumulated through equity in my home and equity in this rental property, not by saving. So I'm not just here giving you advice or information, I actually live it and believe in it. And that's why I thought Dave was a great partner in this, and that's why I approached him with this, because I know that his history with investing and his family's history in investing fit in kind of perfect with this. So I think Dave wants to share one experience with you as well, and then we'll carry on.
And as maybe you may or may not know, with also my family's immigrants as well. My dad lost his father really young. Started purchasing, I think it was 20s when he first purchased his rental properties. And by the time he passed away 5 years ago, he accumulated, I think, 6 or 7 commercial properties, a few residential properties. And it's a very wealthy man coming from nothing, from basically a grade 9 education. That was great for him, but that's not, personally, that doesn't affect my pocketbook, right? What I started doing, I think it was about 13 years ago, I realized what my dad was doing, and when I approached him, and we bought together, like he helped me a little bit, but it's under my name. I bought a sixplex. And I remember I paid $690,000 for this sixplex. With obviously, the other time, it was always a cash positive property we've had. So we've managed 6 units. And it's accumulated so much equity that to the point that it's paid off. We were able to buy my matrimonial home with my wife by pulling the equity from the home, and then pulling both equity from that home, from the matrimonial home and the sixplex. I was able to turn our matrimonial home into another rental property and to purchase yet another home, which is one we're currently living in now. And we just kind of keep doing that kind of thing. So for me, it was funny when I was working in corporate, you're making your 6-figure, and everyone thinks that's where your wealth is coming from. But I was actually had a bigger house and was making more money than some of my superiors at the time. And people just thought, how's that even possible? And we just didn't talk about, our rental. We didn't talk about our real estate. So for me, that grew a huge love for real estate. And I've been, teaching people how to do this, ever since I learned how to do it. And I just think it's an amazing way for you to have some passive income. And when Michael approaches, I'm like, we've been doing this for years. I think this is great. So we can share that knowledge with you guys. I think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah. So that's why I approached Dave. So in saying all this too, while I was putting this this presentation together, I kind of thought about the last time I was sitting in front of my financial advisor. And I was sitting there to kind of plan out how I was going to invest some of the money that I had. And I realized that none of the conversation was around real estate, okay? And it's understandable. Financial advisors, we all should have a financial advisor. They're very, beneficial to us. They can provide us with a lot of information and advice. But they're trained and licensed to sell financial products, right? Mutual funds, insurance, stocks and bonds. They're not really trained or educated enough to talk about real estate. But like I said before, most of my wealth that I have today has been accumulated through real estate. And most of the people in my circle are in the same boat. It's been accumulated through real estate. And I think if you guys think about some of the wealthier people potentially, a lot of it was generated through real estate. So
I can think of one who's also the president of the United States.
There you go, exactly.
Yeah, he's had a few dollars,
Exactly, right? And I think if you look back in history, all the wealthy families out there, it's a lot of it is from land acquisition. So I just want you to think that, we think of financial advisors as advisors, but they're also salespeople in financial products. But on the flip side, we can think of a real estate agent like Dave, who is extremely knowledgeable in this field as an advisor, and you guys should trust him and lean on him for his advice when you're trying to put together a portfolio, especially involving real estate, okay?
Yeah, and on that point too, we said we always got to take into consideration, and I know Stephen and I, we actually own a rental property coming together, so it's great for us. But the goal of real estate always should be long-term, right? the only time we've actually seen problems, and I'm saying people when they're trying to have like the quick fix, so you're trying to flip houses, it's when you're speculating. Same thing when you're gambling. It's almost like you're gambling. When you're trying to get in and out quickly, that's the time you get burned. You have to look at real estate at the long term. And over long term, we've seen over the last few years, and we'll talk about the numbers, but it'll astound you about the numbers we've seen and how it's accumulated throughout the years. If you're looking just to get in and out, I usually advise not doing that because it is a higher risk and you might not get the reward. So, and I was just one more little quick story. I remember I was talking to Michael who was watching a flipping story. I think it was on HCTV or something like that. And it was funny because the whole show was about flipping houses. But you know what, the guys, and these guys were from Yale. I remember the guys, like two of them are brothers, one's a cousin. And it's funny, he pulled us aside, he goes, actually today's episode, we're gonna tell you how we actually earn our money. He goes, the flipping is fine, that's kind of just the icing on the cake, but our real wealth comes from this. And he pointed to all these rental properties he goes, today, we're gonna show you how to flip our rental properties and keep our renters and accumulate how increasing the rent. That's what actually puts the food on our table. The flipping is just our side business and it's just fun for us. And it's funny, like people thought that's how they accumulated wealth. In reality, it was the rental properties that was bringing them the money.
Exactly, for sure. It's definitely a long-term investment, absolutely, and that's where you're going to see the rewards, and we'll get into the numbers like David said in a little bit. Okay, so just a simple disclaimer before tonight. This is not advice. These are my opinions, and opinions are like feet. Everybody has a couple, and most of them stink, okay? So just keep this in mind while I'm giving you my opinions tonight, okay? So why are we here tonight? Okay, so you guys are here on a Thursday night. You guys could be watching a Leaf game. I know some people here turn down tickets, okay? But why you're here, I think, is to get some answers or some ideas on how to answer some of the three main questions, okay? And first question is how to pay off your home in 10 years or faster than what you're on pace to today. How to help pay for your kids' education, and how to build wealth for retirement, okay? These are the three main questions that most people think about and are concerned about on a day-to-day basis. And they struggle to find solutions for this. All the while still maintaining a good life today, right? Enjoying their life today. In recent times, I think there's a fourth question that can be added to this. It's not on the slide, but that is how to help our children purchase a home. I think everybody knows that it's becoming more and more difficult for younger people to get into the housing market. Prices have gone up very, very rapidly, and younger people are having more difficulty. So if we want our children to stay in the middle class or above, staple of that is home ownership. And I think that the reality is that we're gonna have to figure out how to help them with that. So today in this presentation, we're going to look to kind of answer some of these questions and give ideas on how we can solve those questions for you, okay? So before I move to the next slide, we're going to just do a little exercise. David is so happy that you guys came today, so appreciative, that he is actually going to deposit $100,000 in each one of your bank accounts tonight, okay? So thank you very much, okay? All right, so there's just one stipulation with this money, and that is that you have to either purchase a thing, an item that is not responsible, it's frivolous, okay? Just pure enjoyment, or you have to purchase an experience or pay for an experience, okay? So just take a second to think about what you would choose, one or the other, okay?
Experience.
No more clothes, please, no more clothes.
Full of experience, he knows.
So show of hands, who would pick a thing? Okay, and a show of hands, who would pick an experience? Okay, perfect. So everybody else except the gentleman there. What's your name, sir?
Robert.
Robert? Robert, can I ask what that thing was?
It would be a car.
A car, okay, most common answer for sure. Yeah. Anybody else pick a car? No? Yeah? Car? What did you?
I have a fascination with condos, so.
Condos? But that's not frivolous.
Oh, frivolous, yeah. Come on, man. It's true. Okay, that Corvette's nice.
Okay, a car, perfect. So a nice car, right?
Corvette's nice.
So a nice car, right? So does anybody think that Robert would pick a car and he's thinking about that car sitting in his garage collecting dust, or is he envisioning this car and experiencing it with his friends, family, loved ones? Right? It's probably the latter, right? So what I'm trying to get to in this is that whether it's a thing or an experience, It makes no difference. Ultimately, what most people want, what I want, is to live a good life, okay? And to experience that with the people that we love, right?
Absolutely.
Fair enough? So the reality about that is that requires a little bit of this. Requires a little bit of wealth, okay? And in that example, it's $100,000, but who knows in real life, whatever that is. But we need to we need to figure out how we're going to accumulate this wealth. And the traditional way of doing that is, we go into the bank and we give somebody our money, right? And we ask them and we say, can you please look after this money and have our best interests at heart, right? How many people think that somebody else will look after your money better than you?
I work for a bank, so.
So you'll look after your own money, right? But the reality is nobody cares about your money more than you do. That's for sure, right? So we're taught at a very young age that we go to school, we get an education, we get a job, we get promotions, we earn money. But nowhere in that process are we taught how to invest that money, okay? Unless you've taken courses or this is your field of expertise, you haven't really been taught that. So we put this trust in other people. So let's just say that we have an opportunity to go back and talk to our younger self. That'd be pretty cool, right? We can talk to them, we give them advice. We could maybe tell them who to listen to, what to do, how to invest their money, right? But unfortunately, we can't do that. It's not possible. But hopefully we're going to be alive for the next 10 years, okay? So the decisions we make today will affect our life in 10 years. So our future self, all that future self could ask of us is to do the best we can today with what we have, okay? So that's what this is about. It's about taking some of that control or power that we've given to other people over our money and taking it back and making decisions that help us and what we want to do with that money, okay? So let's go back to this word wealth. This word wealth is the state of being rich or material prosperity. But I think we should be focusing on this, what true wealth is. And true wealth is an abundance of possessions or money and the ability to use that money in your time, on your terms, without concern or fear. Okay? Now let's focus on this part here, without concern or fear. That's the big part that I want to focus on. We all want to live a good life, but we're limited or we worry about money or running out of money. And I think that I think all of us know some wealthy people that maybe aren't the happiest people in the world, right? And I think maybe one of the reasons that is that they have concerns or fear that they're going to run out of money, so they don't spend that money. They've worked so hard all their life to earn that, but they're not set up that they can continue to earn money in their later years. And that's one of the flaws maybe in traditional financial planning is that it doesn't allow for that. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But what I want for you guys to get out of this and what I want you to think about today is how can we ultimately get to this part and how we can do better than what we're doing today. So think about what you're doing today and the concepts that we're talking about today, this evening, and if you can do better, okay? So that's what I really want you guys to think about while we go through the presentation, okay? We clear, we're good? Okay.
No one needs a bathroom break or anything, are you good?
Okay, so let's get into it the safest way. When you were a little kid, what did your parents tell you to do with your money?
Give it to them.
Besides that.
And what would they do?
And what did they do with it?
They would take that money and put it to the bank.
They take it to the bank, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what is and you put it in savings or GICs, right? Something safe, right? So you work at a bank, so you can't answer. Can anybody tell me what the average rate of return on a 1-year GIC is today?
1%, 1.5%, I don't know.
Exactly, something like that, right? But to make math easy, 1%, okay? So that means $10,000 today invested becomes $10,100 a year from now, right? So 1% return. Now, that $100 that you've earned, congratulations, right? But it's taxed as if it's income, right? So let's assume you're in a 30% tax bracket. So you pay 30% tax on that. So your net rate of return is 0.7%, okay? So you started off with 1%, now you're down to 0.7%, okay?
A little bit of a kick, yeah.
So that's 0.7% positive return, right? Although you're getting income, it's terrible income. You are getting income, so at least you're getting something. However, the problem is that we live in a time of inflation. A dollar today doesn't equal a dollar tomorrow, right? So average inflation, we're going to use 3% rate average inflation. That means if you buy a loaf of bread today at $3, next year it's going to cost $3.09. So your net effect is actually minus 2.3%. Okay. So in 12 months, what you could buy today.
Where you got that number from?
It's the 3%.
So 3%. Remember he was saying this one that 0.7%. So you take the 3%, you minus that 0.7% because inflation is going higher than you're actually earning. So
we take the 0.7 minus the 3, so it's a negative. It's a negative net effect, right?
Up with inflation.
Yeah. Okay. So what you could buy with $10,000 today, $10,000 today will only equal $9,770 a year from now. Okay. So the key is whenever you're investing, you want that to kind of keep up with inflation, just like David said, right? So in this scenario, yes, you have income. You have that $100, but you have zero growth. Okay. So when we invest, we must look to do two things. And that is to control assets that both produce income and grow in value. Okay, so that $10,000 did not really grow in value. It actually diminished in purchasing power. Okay, so we want some, it did, like I said before, it did produce income, so it did produce something. It's a very small amount of income, but it didn't grow in value. Okay, so that's what we want to do. And the second thing is we want to expand and control more than what we have now. So that $10,000 is good to save. But what if we use that $10,000 and leveraged it to, let's say, $200,000 and then invested that into an asset that was more suitable for it, that produced income and growth, okay? Remember, let's think about what we're doing today and if there's something better that we can do, okay? And it's just something that I want you guys to think about, okay? Maybe there's something that we can do instead of what we're doing today. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So, this slide here, I really want you guys to understand this. I think it's very important. If one thing you take away today, I think this is an important slide. And this is an illustration on how banks make their lending decisions and how they view risk, okay? So, in this world, we can put our money in 3 different asset classes, primarily. That's a business, shares or stocks, or property. There's other types of investments, but they all kind of fall under one of these categories, okay? So let's assume you have $100,000, and it could be savings, it could be an inheritance, it could be an insurance payout, it could be borrowed, so it could be equity out of a current home or something along those lines. And you go into the bank that you've been a client for many, many years. Okay, your family bank there, you have a great relationship there. And you have a meeting with your branch manager and you say, hey, Mr. Branch Manager, I have $100,000 and I want to invest it in a business. How much money will you lend me to purchase this business? Okay. And you tell them too, like, I've been a client, a loyal client to you guys for so many years. How much money will you lend me? What do you think the answer would be? Don't look at the screen because the number is there, but that's actually not really the number. The number is 0. They probably wouldn't give you any money, okay? But because you're such a great client, they're going to lend you $100,000. They're going to match your money, okay? And the reason why they probably wouldn't is because most small businesses, I don't think banks are in the business of lending to buy small businesses because most small businesses don't last, right? Okay? But this guy's being very generous and he's going to give you $100,000. So now you have $200,000, you can go out and buy that small business, okay? Now question, do you think that this business is going to produce a passive income, or do you think you just bought yourself a job? Okay, that you're gonna have to put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, lots of hours into it, right? Small business, right? $200,000 doesn't get you much, okay? So that's what you're gonna buy. So you say, thanks a lot. We've exercised, we looked at this option. Let's look at the second option. Can you get your #1 financial advisor, have them come in the room, because I wanna give them my $100,000 to invest. And how much will you lend me to give to your financial advisor to invest on my behalf? And again, most likely the answer is 0. In some cases, if a client is a high net worth client or a very valued client, maybe they'd give them something. But in most cases, it'd be 0. So, but again, this case, he's being generous. They're going to give you $100,000 too. So that person will go out and invest in stocks and bonds, etc. Great. Third option. You say, thanks for those 2 options. Let's talk about the third option, and it's property. I want to buy a piece of property. Now, I don't know what type of property I'm going to buy. It could be condo, it could be a townhouse, could be a 2-story. I don't even know where it is. It could be in Toronto, could be in Peel, Durham. I don't know these answers. But I know I have $100,000. How much are you willing to give me to buy this house? And in this scenario, if you qualify, they'd be willing to give you up to $400,000, okay? 80% of the value of the home, right? So now you can go out and buy a $500,000 property. Great. So look at these numbers here. And where does it look like the bank would prefer to put their money? In a small business, with their investor that, I mean, we could even told them to invest in your stock. Like, do whatever you want, right? Or in property. Okay, so what the banks bank on is property. I think it shows that they believe that property is less risky in this scenario, right? And wouldn't it be good to understand what the bank does and maybe copy them, because they're pretty successful. They make a lot of money, right? So if we can think like them or understand what they do, maybe it's something that we should be trying to do too as well, okay?
And you've all experienced this as well. Like, you know, with conventional mortgage, we're not talking high risk mortgage. We're just talking regular. He's talking plain, regular, conventional mortgage. 20% is usually what pushes down.
Yeah.
And that's why I was just explaining. Even the banks are doing this,
yeah.
Right?
So I think we should be maybe a little even upset about this, because all our life the banks have been, you know, commercials or whatever, they've been telling, bring your money here and we'll invest it. But that's not what they would do with their money, right? They would, in this, you know, they'd rather put it into property, okay? So good understanding of that? Yeah? Okay. So let's talk about some money here. So let's say our goal was to make $100,000 over a 5-year period. In the first 2 scenarios, we would need a 50% return to reach our goal. Okay? In other words, that'd be 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, 10% over the next 5 years. Okay? How many people are getting that type of return in the stock market? I think some people might be.
Maybe, yeah, good luck.
Nobody that I know, I don't think, but some people might be. But that's expecting a lot of that investment, right? But in the property, we're only expecting we only need a 20% return over that 5-year period. In other words, 4% for the next 5 years, okay? Each year for the next 5 years. How many homeowners in the room here? Have you guys experienced a 4% increase in the value of your home year over year in the past 5 years? More, right? Okay.
According to the real estate agents? Or
oh, there you go. Right? So more, right? So it's very, very possible, very doable, right? Very believable, okay? So we're asking a lot less of that investment. Okay, so that's great. 20% is great return. What if I could show you that you can actually make 25% instead of 20? Okay, so 25% return on your investment, and this is how that works. So you went out and purchased that $500,000 property, and I know $500,000 doesn't get you much in the GTA. That's fine. However, it works if you multiply this number. It works with any number, right? You just multiply it. So you buy a $500,000 property, and you use your $100,000, and the bank gives you another $400,000, right? So let's say that property values increase at a 5% rate each year, and this is actually a number over the past 50 to 60 years in Toronto. We're a little bit more than 5%, to be honest with you, but for ease of math, it's 5%. Okay.
It's actually over 6.
Okay, there you go.
Or less.
So again, what would have been the best place to put this money? Okay. So just think about that. And and also, let's just say that this property was rented, and you were collecting rent and paying down your mortgage. In about a year, you would have paid down approximately $10,000 of that mortgage. So it's actually a 35% return, or 35% growth in the value of your asset or equity gained, right? Okay.
Everybody understand that? Yeah. So
Yeah.
renters are paying down your mortgage, and every mortgage payment pays down some of your principal. So that's what he's saying.
Okay. So if you don't believe that about the 5%, this is a stat that I got earlier in the year from Genworth. Genworth is, I think, the second largest, or the largest private mortgage insurer in Canada. Next to CMHC, they're the largest insurer. This is over the past 20 years in Ontario, so this is 2020, so this is the future. So I didn't do the calculation, but I think you can see that if we drew a line here, it's very, it's about 5% or if not more, minus the really good year, obviously, and some of the poor years.
That only happens once every 25 years. So.
Right, but we have ups, we have downs, but again, over the long time, and this is Ontario, Toronto's a little bit higher than Ontario, but over, this is the proof of that 5% is a very realistic number, okay? So, what about the risks? So let's talk about some risks.
Well, actually, before you get into risk,
yes.
And I'll stay out of it for the most part. But
Yes.
I do have one question.
Go ahead.
In terms of inflation,
Yes.
because you did mention inflation back when we were talking about just normal investment and what our parents paid and all that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the property, that's going to be reflected by the value of inflation year over year, but the investment won't. Right? So you're looking at the property in at least based on what you
Absolutely.
said. Yeah. So that 25% is now 21%, give or take.
Yeah.
Depending on inflation, whereas that investment in the market is still your 4 or 5%.
Right, and you're already using the 3%, right? So
yeah.
the big can, we're trying to get between 1% and 3%, right?
Yeah.
Chances are 3%, that's a high inflation.
Okay, so you're using that as a buffer.
Right, we're using that as a higher.
Yeah. And also, I think you'll see later on too, after we talk about selling the property or taking our earnings, we're talking about removing some of that, some fees and taxes, etc. So we're not using like this number of just compounding or like things like that. So we'll talk about a little bit of that. For sure, absolutely.
Sort of the real world.
Absolutely.
But the rents go up too.
Absolutely, rents do increase, but the cost of maintaining that property goes up too. So everything kind of goes up. But all things being equal, we're talking about the asset value growing at these rates. And if we did decide to liquidate, we'll talk about removing some of those costs and kind of adjusting it that way. Okay. So risks. What are the risks? So a lot of people would believe, or I'll ask you guys. Do you believe that it is less risky to borrow $100,000 and invest it in the stock market, or borrow $400,000 and invest it in property? Which one would be more risky?
Which would be riskier?
The 100, right? Okay. Yeah. So that's great. It's not about actually the amount of money actually. So a lot of people do believe that it's about the amount of money and that equals risk, but I'm here to tell you that it's not. So risk does not equal amount of debt owed, okay? It doesn't. As long as it's in the right asset class, it doesn't equal more debt, more risk. What risk I want you to look at is risk is a function of three things, and that is demand for that asset, control of that asset, and exit strategies if you got to get out of it, okay? So let's look at the stock market and think about risks. And this is an extreme example, but imagine there's a company out there. They are a blue chip stock. They are the leader in their industry in the world, okay? And news comes out that they were lying on their emissions testing, okay? And they were using it in their marketing strategy, okay? What do you think happened to that stock? I think all of you guys, or most of you know who I'm talking about, right? But it doesn't really matter. What do you think happened to that stock when the news came up out of that? Okay, it took a nosedive, right? Do you think there was high demand for that stock at the time? No. Did you have actual control? If you were a shareholder, did you have control over the value of that asset? No, right? And what were your exit strategies in this situation? You could either sell it and take a huge loss, right? Or you could hold it and hope that it came up. Maybe when your kids or grandkids were older, like it would, right? Who knows, right? But that's an extreme example, but it's just to show that these three things are extremely important. It's to illustrate how important these three functions are, right? I didn't put them up. That's my problem.
Can I just add one more company which makes me laugh?
Go ahead.
And if you guys remember Snapchat, obviously you guys have Snapchat. There was an incident that happened last year. Again, you're a shareholder. It's a public company. This thing with Rihanna and Chris Brown. I don't know if you guys remember that. They lost $1 billion overnight because of one post. And if you were a stock market holder at that point, $1 billion over one post, it was just because of domestic violence. Obviously, they were kind of trying to make it light. How much control do you have over that? If you're in that situation, you had just bought that stock, yeah, good luck recovering that.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's look at a house or a property and the risks of a property. Who in this room could name this city? So it's a world-class city, okay? It gets about 100,000 people moving into the city every single year, whether you like it or not. And it's somewhere, you know, that you guys are very familiar with. What city is that?
Boston.
Right? Toronto, right? This city here. That's what happens in this city every single year. Okay, GTA. If you ask anybody outside of Toronto, it's Toronto. Nobody says Mississauga, right? If someone was in Florida, Mike, what would they say? They wouldn't say Mississauga for sure. They would say Toronto, right? Okay. So anyway, the GTA.
Toronto.
Okay. So we're very fortunate that we live here because we have these opportunities. So about 100,000 people move in each year, and that drives up the demand for housing. Okay. So there's definitely a demand in this area for housing. There's also a finite amount of space to build homes in this area because we have a lake to the south and we have the green belt to the north where we can't build. So we're on a very finite piece of land that we can actually build, okay? So David, as the great realtor that he is, and I don't say that jokingly, I really do think he's a great realtor, he can actually help you guys pinpoint the areas of high demand in the city where it's best to invest, or areas that are in the path of that demand, okay? So that's demand. Control. If let's just say you purchased a property on a nice street in one of these areas on the path of demand, okay? It's not a beautiful house. Is there anything you can do with your two hands to increase the value of this home? There is. I think you can paint it. Yeah, you can. Yeah, exactly. You can paint it, change a kitchen, change a bathroom, do some landscaping, or if you're like me, hire somebody if you want it done properly, right? Okay.
Add an apartment.
Absolutely, right? And we'll get to that. That's the next function. But so we can do things with our own hands to increase the value of that property. Okay. And finally, exit strategies. So if you do have to get out of this, you can either rent it. You could sell it. You can improve it and increase the rent and the sale price. You can change its use to a duplex, let's say. So add a basement apartment. Now instead of earning $1,800 a month for the whole house, maybe now you can earn $2,400, $2,500. Okay. You can rent to own it. So this is an idea that somebody wants to purchase your home, but they'll pay you above market rent on a monthly basis to end up owning it over time. Or what many of our clients are doing, and this is what Dave was talking about before, is that you can increase its value, whether it's by renovating it or by just holding it because the value is going up, having it appraised at a higher value, and then taking out that equity and now going out and making further investments. I think most people do it, put that money into real estate, right? And you can do that over and over and over again as long as you can qualify. Okay? Do you want to say something to that part?
Yeah, so I kind of like this. How many of you guys play poker? Yeah, so I kind of refer to this as like playing with the house's money, right? Obviously, in the beginning, sometimes you might have to use your own equity to purchase a house. But once you start earning something, you don't have to touch your own property. It actually pays down a lot of your mortgage. You get to start playing with the bank's money. It's kind of playing with the house's money. And that's kind of like the one. You're able to do that. The more times you can do that, you're playing, and we call it OPM, other people's money. And that's sort of that's how you can maximize something like this. Again, it's over a long term. You don't necessarily have to get a whole bunch of properties to do this, but I am an active user of, and Michael knows this as well, and I was pretty sure you guys do too. We use the bank's money to get wealthy. Yeah.
Okay.
Playing with the house's money.
So other common concerns, David is going to talk about that.
Let me ask you guys. So the ones that are landlords or not landlords, I know we have a couple in the house. What are either getting into a property or what are preventing it, like barriers? What do you think are the biggest risks of owning a rental property?
I'll put up a couple here.
I get this a lot. I don't want to be a landlord. You know, why don't you want to be a landlord? I don't want to take phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to fix a leaky toilet, right? What's another concern you might have?
What if the tenants? Bad tenants.
Bad tenants. We've all had bad tenants. Unfortunately, it happens. You know, you can do the screening process as much as you like. Sometimes you do get that. Any other concerns you might come across?
There you go. Don't want to fix toilets in the middle of the night, right?
Or like myself in 2008, you want to get a phone call at midnight saying your rental property's on fire.
Well,
Yeah, that happened. That's actually true. But believe it or not, there is a solution to that too. And it's like, you don't have to do it. There's always a solution. And I've talked to a number of people. Listen, you can actually get a property manager to handle all that stuff. You can be as passive as you want to. There are a lot of, like, I actually, if you have the time and you want to get your hands a little bit dirty, and I say to actually know the rental process, and you're able, a little bit handy, I'd say, yeah, sure, get involved in the smaller things, you know, not for me, you know, change fire extinguishers, you know, fix a toilet, maybe they're like, I could change a sink and all that. But any of the big stuff, you know, I get plumbers. But I'm smart enough now that also if I need to run most things on my own, I get a property manager. And the best thing about having a property manager, in case you don't want to do any of this stuff yourself, you don't have to touch a thing. You don't have to cash checks. You don't have to go out and find your own renters. You don't have to do any. The property manager makes it part of the fees. And they actually set out in the agreement between the two of you what their duties are. Right? So you'll never get a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning. You'll never get a phone call saying, you know what, my toilet's burning. You'll never get a phone call saying, well, I'll probably get the phone call so when your house is burning down that it doesn't, like, you know, let you know that the house is burnt down. But my point is, you can be either hands-on or hands-off. And a lot of times, it's not as expensive as you think. There are property managers that if you're only handling like basically just the home, it could be like 10% of your earnings. Granted, yeah, you're still keeping 90% and you still write off that 10% when it comes to the property manager. If you get into buildings like, you know, 20 or 30, if you have more units, and I know because I have a property management company, I was still going to do it for the family. I was actually going to do that instead of being a realtor. And I was, most of the time, you can get a property manager if you have a lot of units and a lot more wealth, you know, around 4 to 5, sometimes 6%, 7%, and you can negotiate. And again, it's kind of like ad hoc. I want to do this. If you want to be in charge of the renting, you don't have to pay for that. So you can be as hands-on or as hands-off. So that kind of mitigates the risk. There are tons of companies out there that all you say is, you know what, here's the keys, just deposit the money in my bank account. And they can do it while you're accumulating wealth.
Any questions? Okay. Oh, so back to that. So I just wanted to touch on before I get into the next slide is cash flow. I want to talk about cash flowing. So being a positive cash flow means that you are receiving more income in this rental property than you are paying out in expenses. So in your mortgage and property taxes, essentially. Okay. So you're getting, let's say, $100 to $200 per. Let's call it very low cash flow positive, but $100 to $200 a month in income. Okay, and that's great. Okay, having some income is great. That's not going to make you wealthy. Okay. So having that $100 to $200 is not going to make you wealthy. It'll help you pay the bills, but it's not going to make you wealthy. What's going to make you wealthy in this type of investment is compounding. Okay, so that's Albert Einstein, and he once wrote, "Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it." Okay, so he thought very highly of this and thought it was extremely important, right? That it was the 8th wonder of the world. He's a pretty smart dude. Okay. Crazy hair, but pretty smart dude. So let's talk about the compound effect and how this is how, you know, you could build wealth through real estate. Okay. So that house that you purchased, oh, I got a little thing here. The house you purchased for $500,000, if we do assume an annual growth of 5%, after 1 year, it will increase in value by $25,000. So at the end of the year, it will be worth $525,000. So because of the compound effect, now the next year we start at $525,000 and it grows in value in $26,250 and we're at $551, on and on and on until after 5 years, that property will now be valued at $638,141. Okay, that is a difference of about $140,000. Okay. Now, if this is a rental property, and let's assume that it's cash flow even, okay, you break even on this property, you will have paid down that mortgage through rent about $50,000, okay? So you're actually noticing a asset growth of about $190,000, okay? It's pretty amazing, right? It's pretty good. I think we'd all be happy with that, wouldn't we? Mm-hmm. On our initial $100,000 investment over 5 years, that's what our asset would have grown. Now, that's assuming we have a cash flow even. So I talked about cash flow positive, let's talk about cash flow negative, because the reality is that in the GTA, it may be a little bit more difficult to find a cash flow positive. But I'm here to tell you that this still works even if there's a cash flow negative. But I'm gonna throw an extreme, another extreme. I'm gonna say it's a $500 cash flow negative, okay? So at the end, I don't think you'd buy this property potentially, but let's just assume. Over the 5 years, you will have made basically $30,000 in payments, okay? Wipe off $30,000 off that number. Are we still good? Would we still be happy with it? Okay, so
you invested $100,000.
So even with a cash flow negative property, we'd still be happy with the end result. Because again, where else would this money have been? Okay, again, do the best we can with what we have, right? Are we doing the best? Where else would this money be better served for us? Okay.
So I just make one quick point on this. You guys, I'm assuming you guys know these we're working like, it's only giving up 5%. I ran these numbers, and I think some of you might have saw a video I did before. I ran numbers in January of this year. Average price was, I think, around $730,000 or $740,000. I can't remember off the top of my head. So I went back, I said, well, if I would have bought, and these are all across all working, that's including townhouses, condos, everything. I just took the GTA, I took the average price, right? I went back 10 years, I said, if I had bought the same property 10 years ago, what was that property worth? $343,000. You had to put $68,000 down. And you took that, and now all things being equal, it'd say we took out realtor fees and didn't do all that stuff too. Just like, it was over like, I think it was a 589% increase, okay? So I even did it back, and so Michael and I were talking this way, so I ran my number, I think I showed you my numbers. I took off $1,000 a month over the last 10 years. I'm looking at real numbers here. I'm not looking at hypotheticals. It was still a return of over 400%, even taking over $1,000. That's $12,000 a year saying I was in a cash negative position, right? And that's something paying off. So I just said, oh, this can't be right. This is not normal. But we've talked about the property I talked about earlier, which I paid them $690. Now if I sold it for $3.5 million, it's a joke. I got 30 people running up the street. So it actually, like, I looked real numbers and saying like, so when he's telling me a 5%, it's not being like aggressive. He's just being like actual numbers. The real numbers look more aggressive than the conservative numbers he's presenting.
Okay. Again, this is regular math. This is just traditional math. We're not making anything up. There's not voodoo or anything like regular math, right? Maybe I probably didn't even do well in compounding in high school, but computers do everything now. Okay, yeah, exactly. So that house after 5 years will have gained you that $190,000, right, in asset value. That's on top of your initial purchase price, right? After 10 years, where do I got to point that up here, I think. After 10 years, that's the number. After 20 years, that's the number. And after 30 years, that is the number. So if you held this property for 30 years, and again, this is just simple compounding math, that is the growth in that asset above what you purchased the property at, okay? And when I wrote this number down originally, I was like, this can't be true. This sounds too much. But if you remember the story I told you before about my parents selling their house, they sold it for $280,000, and in 20 years, it grew by 5 times. So this is a 30-year period, and this is 5 times basically your initial investment, or your initial purchase price, okay? So this is very believable and very true because it's happened, okay?
To your point too, I remember door knocking a few years ago. And I think the house was like, this little guy's a bungalow he was at. So we're showing what his neighbor sold for. I think it was $850,000 or $900,000. And he stops, he starts laughing. I'm like, well, why are you laughing? And this is a real story. He's like, I bought this house over 30 years ago for $17,000. Yeah, so $17,000. So his $17,000 turned into $850,000 home.
pretty it's pretty staggering numbers, obviously. Okay.
But the funny thing is, you have someone, he was living in it.
Yeah.
It was not like he was investing in it.
So that's a 38% annual return. Okay. We said 35, but we had the compounding, 38, 43, 55, 72% annual return. Yeah, we have to adjust for certain things, but that's what the math tells us. How many people are seeing that type of return on other types of investments, right? Not very many, I don't think, okay? And actually, this is a slide that Dave gave me that I just threw it on a slide here. So GICs are blue, stocks are red, and that is with a $100,000 investment. And what numbers you used? 1% for GICs and 6% for stocks. So after 30 years, if you had it in stocks, it'd be just over the $1 million mark. Okay.
Pretty good.
Pretty good, for sure. Absolutely, I think it'd be great. But
you actually have to have somebody who knows what they're doing to invest in stocks.
We could have been there.
Don't use stocks for me because mine are golden.
And I think 6% might be a little generous, like we were saying, maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6, right, on an annual basis. So that's the comparable. So we could have been here, or here. That example that I gave you, the $500 cash flow negative. I forgot to say something that I want to say. So $500 a month coming out of our own pocket would be, significant for most people for a rental property. But the reality is a lot of people are already taking out this type of money and investing it in RRSPs and RESPs, okay? So instead of, I don't think that our RRSPs are going to accumulate in value like we just saw with the stocks or the stocks example as much as a home. So again, always thinking, are we doing the best we can with what we're doing, right? So go home and analyze what you're doing with that additional money and see if it's the best thing that you can do with it, okay?
And one more caveat to that too. There is a company which, and I won't say because we are doing a live feed, I don't want to give them too many props, which you are able to use your RSPs and to purchase real estate. So you're able to use some of your RSPs so you can pull equity from the property. You're still kind of having the returns that you're getting, and it is like 4 or 5 years. It's a lot of it pre-construction. So I've purchased it as well. We have companies stuff. So you're still, and you can actually purchase into that property. Now you can use your RSPs, RSPs, or you can use CFSAs. Regardless too, and then once you can actually purchase those later on too, but you can use your RSPs and that too. So there are ways, but it's all tied in with real estate and the returns you're getting. This one company, the least amount of return I think was 21% per annum compounded. The most was that, or the unit that they had in Yorkville was 43%. And I thought that was a joke. I remember sitting there like, okay, even I invest in a lot of properties, and it's like 43%. They're like, yeah, we built a condo in Yorkville, and that project got us 43% return per annum. Not overall, not over the life, but per annum, which was ridiculous.
Okay. So let's look at investing in real estate like a tree, okay? You plant the tree, you take care of it, you give it some love, you water it. You find out that one tree is doable. You can do one tree, and you're getting a little bit of income from it, okay? So if you're like most of our clients, you're gonna go out and maybe get 2 or 3 or 4 trees. If you're like a superstar client, you might go out 9, 10, 11 different properties, okay? So this is what it would look like if you were a superstar client and you had 10, is that 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yeah, 10. 10 properties, and you held that for the 20-year period, okay? So we're using the 20-year value there. That's $1.1 million per property, okay? Let's assume that rent increases in that time frame too in 20 years, and maybe you're collecting about $4,000 in rent on these properties as well, okay? So this is what your portfolio would look like. You'd be holding $11 million in assets, and you would be collecting $40,000 a month in income, okay? Now again, this is an extreme situation, but there are clients like this. And a colleague of mine happens to have a client like this. I'll share a story that it was a big anniversary for him, and he wanted to take his whole family to Hawaii to celebrate. Many of them couldn't afford it, so he wanted to pay for everybody to go. So what he did was he chopped down one of those trees, okay, sold it, took the money, took his family to Hawaii, had a wonderful time. Is that client living a good life on his terms? He is, right? Because he was able to do that. Now, a lot of us will say, wow, he lost $1 million in asset by doing that. But over a two-year period, if he held those remaining assets at a rate of return of 5% per year, that would be 10%. 10% of $10 million is $1 million. So in 2 years, he would have recouped his loss, okay? And that's possible because he's holding growth assets, okay? So I'm not here I'm not an expert in financial planning, but I do know a little bit about it in that when you're younger, bless you, when you're younger, you tend to go into more risky growth portfolio. As you get older, you tend to try to balance that out. And as you get older, you kind of like liquidate and go kind of low risk into more income generating investments. So you're removing growth from your portfolio. This client was able to do this because he kept growth in his portfolio, okay? So it's not a bad idea to hold growth assets when you're older in age in retirement. And it's definitely, excuse me, I just lost my train of thought. And it's definitely okay to have mortgages if they are or debt, if they are in the right asset. Even if all those properties had mortgages, this client would be okay. Okay?
Well, that's the other point I was going to make on that. If you go back to that tree, how much of that do you think actually came out of that client's pocket?
Exactly. Okay?
As soon as you get to one of those trees, you never have to dip in your pocket. You really don't. Use other people's money. APM.
So that's how real estate investors retire with true wealth. Okay? Like this. Now again, this is a superstar client. Most people would be maxed out 3 to 4, maybe 5 properties. But again, still be generating a lot of income and holding a lot of growth assets that are valued very high, okay? So let's go this way. Okay, so where do we start? We're almost done, but now I'm gonna show you how we can do this. So you have a current family home of $400, and you have a $200,000 mortgage on that property. So we want to access the equity in those properties and go out and purchase more property. So a bank will lend up to 80% of that value. So that's $320,000. Now you currently have a mortgage of $200,000 already. So available credit or what your equity is $120,000. So you can borrow an additional $120,000. I never recommend borrowing right up to the limit, or using right up to the limit. I would recommend borrowing because you take the money if they give it to you, in most cases. But you leave yourself a little buffer. So we take $100,000 of this money and we go out and buy that $500,000 investment, okay? Now, if we hold that investment again, these were the numbers that we showed earlier, okay? So let's address those 3 big questions that we were talking about at the beginning. And that is, the first one is how to pay off your mortgage in 10 years. If you bought that property and held it for 10 years, the asset will have grown by this amount, okay? You started off with a $200,000 mortgage, remember. You would have paid it down over that 10-year period, probably to about $132,000. Sorry, that's incorrect because you took out more equity. Let's just say you still would have paid it down about $50,000 over that 10-year period, okay? You can go ahead and you could sell this property, wipe out real estate fees, land transfer taxes, any type of fees, etc. And you still probably clear over $300,000, okay? Can that person go out and pay off their principal mortgage? They can, right? And they'd have money to spare. How many of us have ever thought, oh boy, I wish I had bought another house on my street when I bought my current home, right? All of us, right? But we didn't, but it's never too late to start, because as we were saying this whole presentation, values in Toronto continue to grow. They're going to continue to grow. And it's all, there's no time like the present to do that, okay? So that's how we pay off our mortgage faster. And actually, it's counterintuitive. So if somebody asks me, how do I pay off my mortgage faster? It's not by paying larger payments. It's by going into more debt, getting another property to pay off that original debt. Okay. Second question is how to pay for your kids' education. So in Canada, we have what's the vehicle we have is RESP. Okay, many people use that. So the way this works is you can contribute $200 a month. So let's say you contributed that for 20 years. That's $48,000. The government will give you an additional $7,000. That's $55,000. So if you invest that money over a 20-year period, you could expect that to grow between $80,000 to $100,000. Okay, so let's assume it's $100,000. So that's what your child gets to go out and buy to go out and pay for their education. If you bought that property 20 years ago, this is how much you could gift your child if you sold that property. Again, knock off realtor fees, capital gains, etc. You're probably still going to clear about $700,000. Okay, so that's how you can help pay for your children's education. You're giving them significantly more than what they could get in an RESP. And to answer that fourth question, how to help pay for a property, whatever's left over, they can use as a down payment, right? So that's how we can help our children do those two things. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to say one thing, and he hit on one thing, and I've had this question before. We are assuming that there's big growth, right? And that's over years. So what are the chances if you had a stock price and obviously if it dropped and then you had those three options, you get a panic here. So if you have a property like this, in which we know in real estate, it's not constantly going like this. It's not 5% or 6%. What happens, the trend has been like this over the last 30 years, but we all know it's been doing this in between, okay? If you are renting it and it's earning you something you know in the long term, if it happens to drop, we are in a recession. Are you gonna sell that home in a recession? And what happens first of all, what happens in a recession if people can't afford their homes, right? Are they gonna need rent somewhere because they don't afford a home? Guess what, if you have a rental, what can happen to your rents? There's more people looking for rent. Your rent's gonna go up, okay? So let's use that. Okay, so you don't sell in a recession. That's the second thing. So these are kinds of like, so I've had these arguments saying, well, if a recession hits or depression, like something that happens, what do you do with that home? Like, if it's cash flow positive, then guess what? It's probably going to continue, chances are it's going to continue to be cash flow positive, if not earning more. And I can tell you that the last recession we had, that, again, I can remember like the two properties I had, because at that point I had two properties, both went up in value and the rents went up. And there was a recession. And I was looking around going, what are these people talking about a recession? Everyone's worried about it. So all my rents went up and I was able to pay down more of my mortgage. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So I'm not saying I'm telling you that as a hypothetical. I'm actually telling you, this was 2009, the last 2008, 2009 when we had the recession, right? And I didn't have a ton of money. I remember that we had just got married. We had to do all the renovations. We were like almost cash poor at that point because we got hit pretty hard labor. It's a long story short. I'm not getting into that. But we were able to weather the storm because of the rents, right? The rents went up. We didn't panic. We didn't sell off our property. And now we're sitting better in that position because we were able, because we had the rents. So that's also, so in case somebody else came back, and I've had that argument before, oh, you're only assuming growth. No, I'm not assuming growth. I'm assuming the worst case scenario sometimes. I'm looking for the worst case scenario. When I'm talking to people and we are looking for a rental property, something I'm going to do, so I'm going to say, first of all, is this house going to be rented? What are the values going to be up there? Is there going to be a subway close to it? There's certain things you're looking for in case there is a recession, that people are losing jobs and homes. They're going to have to live somewhere. Why are they going to want to live here? Okay. Does that make sense?
One other thing too, when we're talking about this, it's of course I'm saying that this is the best option, right? It'd be better to do this as opposed to putting that $200 in RESPs. I'm not saying that. I think that that's a great vehicle as well. But the thing we have to consider as well is that this requires capital. Okay. It requires that $100,000 in capital. So if you do have that, many homeowners are sitting on that capital. Okay, many people in this room are sitting on that capital. This doesn't work for people, maybe first-time home buyers or people that don't have that, right? But if you do, again, it's always coming back to the same thing. Are we doing the best we can with what we have? Okay, so just keep that in mind as well. So the third is how to build wealth for retirement. Well, this one's pretty easy. If you're in your 30s, you buy one house and you hold it for 30 years, right? The reality is most people that we help do this are not in their 30s, they're in their 40s, 50s, and 60s even, okay? And they've done the math and they realize that they don't have enough. They see retirement, but they don't have enough to get to the finish line, right? So what we'll do in this case is we'll sit with them and we'll build a portfolio of 2, 3, 4 properties and get as close to this number as possible, okay? and hold, and as long as we have to hold it, okay? So that's what we're doing with a lot of our clients as well. Okay, so that's it. So what we covered today is, you know, the 3 different types of asset classes: shares, business, property, and property is what the bank banks on, and how we can use the knowledge to answer those 3 big questions: how to pay off your home, how to pay for your kids' education, and how to build wealth for retirement. This information here, again, like I said, I truly believe in it, and I work with my clients each and every day, even the ones that are not ready for this. My first-time home buyers, I have meetings with them, and I lay this all out and see if this is something that they want to do, and we work on a plan to eventually get to their goal, okay? And so if anybody wants more information on this, please, I have a little form that you can fill out, and I'd be happy to give you a call. It's a free consultation. There's no obligation. I'd just be happy to provide you with information. Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed this, and thanks so much for listening.
Just one little point I forgot to mention.
Okay,
When I had my slides, if you put my slides up there.
Which one?
The one with the graphs. The reason why the graphs work, we talk about the compound interest effect, right? So we had the $100,000. The reason why the compound interest works for even at a lower interest rate is because we're borrowing. When you are looking at compound interest, if you're using that $100,000, you're buying a $500,000 asset. You're earning compound interest on the $500,000, not on the $100,000.
Right.
So your interest rate has to be, if you're only having that $100,000, your interest rate has to be crazy, more than double to equal what you're going to get at that point. And we were playing with the numbers. I'm saying at 5%, I think it was over 12 or 13%. I think it had to get to accumulate the continuous growth every single year.
Average, yeah.
On average, should only get a 5% compounding interest increase for the housing market. And you see, and obviously, and that's the stock market. That's obviously GIC is not going to happen. But that's how we got to the number. We were using this number. We were playing around with it.
Yeah, I think it was over 10.
With the GICs. I don't think the government's there to make you rich. So the GICs. Any questions we have on that?
I have a question from a different day.
Yes.
You mentioned RSPs before.
Yeah.
I know you can use your RSPs as a first-time home buyer. You don't get taxed if you pay it back in 15 years. How would you use your RSPs? What's the tax rate if you use your RSP on a rental property?
So on the rental property, you know the number. So the one the company that it actually goes back into an RSP. It stays in RSP. So I was actually buying it. So instead of regular, that one company I was telling you about,
right.
It's not like you're not using your RSP to purchase it. Instead of buying regular RSPs, they have a company and it actually changed it to RSPs. I personally, and I don't care how many financial planners, I hate RSPs. But I hate taxes more. That's the only reason why I pay my RSPs.
Okay, I thought you said you can use your RSP and use that as a...
I don't know if you can actually use that. I don't think you can.
I don't think so. First-time home buyers is actually up to $35,000 now.
Principal residence.
Right.
Has to be a principal residence. You can actually purchase a second home as long as you haven't lived in the home you own for, I think it's 4 years.
Right.
Yeah, so sorry about that confusion. That's a different property, But I actually like that company more because you can actually buy grassroots, and they only build when it's like 100% convenient. They're one of the companies that'll buy out the land, and they'll sit on and talk about this and waiting to it. And then when the market shares, the reason why they get the highest market share because they buy out the land, they only have to pay taxes. It's their only risk, and your only risk is time. And you're actually better off buying the property to purchase the property than you are in putting the RSPs. But they give you that option.
So is it on average 10% that a property management company would charge?
No,
no,
absolutely not.
No, what is
no.
it?
So that was just one of the ones. It was one of the higher ones because I was saying because I was trying to. What I was doing, I was calling around trying to figure out what my competition was and trying to figure out where I was going to make money with this business plan. And no, you can do it less than that. And I saw 8%. It's not less than that, depending on how big of a company you want to get and how much you actually want them to handle.
Right.
Actually, one thing with property management companies, if you get them to handle multiple properties for you, you can usually get them to flat rate you for the year.
Yeah, that's correct.
So this way you don't have to deal with percentage. You flat rate them year over year, and then you're done.
And if you get into commercial properties,
that's a whole different story.
You make that part of the TMI. So there's nothing else.
Right.
TMI is taxes, maintenance, and insurance. You don't have to pay $1 for it. So we have one of our rental properties, which I'm not even touching the property management. There's too much stuff there because otherwise I do it myself. But this property management company, we just charge it back to our clients. And they know it's part of that. It actually comes in their P&L and everything.
The scenario where you have an existing homeowner and you pull out some equity, I guess via a line of credit, let's call it.
Home equity line of credit.
You can do it in two ways. You can either do that, or you can actually just refinance your mortgage.
Right.
Mhm.
So then you assume you buy a rental property, so you got 100, so you're paying interest on the line of credit and on the mortgage that you have to get to buy the rental property, right?
Correct.
So which one can you write off? Both?
The rental property.
The rental property.
So,
Yes.
So back to it, where if you're just getting mortgage, so I'll give you an example too. So I bought a property so my dad had bought a rental property which my mom didn't want to close on, and I bought it off of her.
Yeah.
So we talked with the bank, and I said eventually I want to get a mortgage on it, but I had to close it quickly. I pulled off one of my line of credits $305,000. I paid it outright, so I'm only paying the interest on that. If I want to convert it back into a regular mortgage, which I can, which I'll probably do later on, I could convert it. Now, principal I can't write off,
Right.
but interest you can.
Right.
Now, if you're renting, here's what I would suggest doing. So when you're looking at a conventional mortgage, the first half of a mortgage, let's call it a 25-year mortgage, you're heavily higher on interest in the first half of the mortgage. You get to write all that off, right? So the last half, after, so say the first 13 years, you can write off most of that mortgage, that interest, it's higher. After that, the 13 year, then it becomes, you're paying off principal. If you're in a rental property, you never want to pay off that mortgage, to be honest with you.
Right.
If you can get a 40-year mortgage, because that interest rate you're getting back anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I never want to, and guess what, your values are increasing anyway. So even if you bought a $600,000 property 15 years ago, it's worth $2 million now, you're still paying $400. That's, for example, my rental property. It's like, it's ridiculous how low it is. Well, I'm here too. But I just keep pulling the equity out. As long as you want to give me more money, great. I'm going to buy something else. You want to give me more money?
Or if you don't want to renegotiate the mortgage time after time, you can set it up as a line of credit, a revolving
Home
line.
equity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And take advantage of whatever the revolving rate is at this point.
Right.
So
And then
some of
just
the
sit
rate-
on the line of credit and pull it out as you need.
Yeah.
Right.
In most
So the-
cases.
yeah, sorry, the product you have, as you're paying down your mortgage, the interest you have comes in as a line of credit. I
As a
also
line
have
of
that
credit,
one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Where that grows.
Exactly. Yeah. So you pay down your mortgage, it becomes available in line of credit.
And what you can do if you want, which I do sometimes, as I earn the rent, instead of keeping it in my bank account, I don't need it in my bank account, it's not earning me anything, I put it back onto the line of credit. I still have access to it, so if I need the money, I just put it back into my bank account.
Yeah.
So, and you're just earning less. So
Yeah.
it's just a shuffle game. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And the fun part is when the bank comes back and says, hey, we've noticed you've made all your payments for the last year. Do you want to increase your line of credit? Yes.
Take it every
Yeah.
Because you're like, do you want a $50,000 Visa card? You can write in like, no, but I guess. Yeah, it's the word. Every few months they keep calling me up and thanks the Lord. So yeah, you see, like, and that's and the reason why I think this works is like Mike will tell you theoretical. I can actually tell
Exactly.
you real life. This is exactly what we're doing. It's not hypothetical at all. I can even show you my bank account, but I don't think you want to see that's how we do it. But yeah.
Hold on, so we're not getting the $100,000?
Unfortunately not. He told me the check bounced though.
All right, I can write one for you right now.
Sorry, but
We
yeah.
just take your car from the parking lot.
Be nice. So is that it?
Awesome.
Any questions? All right.
Thanks, guys.
You're going to end the live feed, then we're good.
Thank you.
All right, who's buying the house? Let's go.
So here's a list of houses.
Game's not over yet.